Welcome to What Drives You. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, Toxic Productivity, how to detach your self-worth from how much you produce. I think we're all well aware that our culture has fallen into this idea of being busy as being important. But I'll admit that even as I'm trying to shed that, I still find myself busy, really busy. And I just agree to things without counting the cost. And I think considering how it attaches to my own identity. So I find myself struggling mentally with bitterness and burnout. And I just want to escape. So in this book, Toxic Productivity, Reclaim Your Time and Emotional Energy in a World That Always Demands More. When it came across my desk, I was eager to have the author on, Israa Nasir. She is a New York City-based psychotherapist, writer, and the founder of Well Guide, a digital community for mental health awareness. She's got a big following on Instagram at well.guide. So in her focus on toxic productivity, she tries to dismantle the myth that doing more makes you more worthy. And that's where I dig in with her in this conversation. My primary interest was how we associate our identity with all that we do, with our productivity. And Israa and I really landed a lot on intention, asking ourselves, why do we do what we do? What is the outcome we're expecting? And what need of our own are we trying to fulfill, especially as it relates to our identity? When I'm not having these conversations with amazing people on human potential, I'm working directly with people on their human potential. You can connect with me at kevinmiller.co. Here's a few sponsors that help make the show possible. Then drive with me a moment to consider toxic productivity, how to detach your self-worth from how much you produce. Let's see what we can learn for ourselves today. Israa, when your book came across my desk, it's kind of like that you had me at hello. And it's not because I think it's an important topic only. It's because it's something I've struggled with my entire life. It was, I don't know how many years ago that it came to my realization. Doesn't mean that I fixed it, but I realized I'm addicted to productivity and I've forgotten how to rest. You actually said it in the way that I love it. I was a professional doer. I didn't know how to be. I didn't even have the thought of how to be. And even as I say that, I hear people, nod their heads, but we have no training in how to be unless you happen to have somebody in your life who exemplified that, which I think few people have. So you're talking about something I feel like people are going to nod to, and yet I feel like we have no training or exposure to being. Fair?
Yeah, I would say that that's fair. In our school environment, in our family, like home environment, the way we structure chores at home when we're younger, or like it starts so early. This idea that you constantly have to be doing, moving, acting, just changing something in the environment around you through your own behavior. And if you're just kind of sitting idle, that, especially as a young kid, like that's seen as a very bad thing. Like, why are you not doing something? You should be going out to play, and like you're forced to go play, even if, let's say, you just wanted to hang out just in your room, right? And that just becomes more amplified in school. And then it continues to be amplified in the work culture. And the environment that we are in right now, work is the most predominant theme in most people's lives.
Yeah.
And so if you're not working constantly, what are you doing? Why are you not doing something?
Okay. So I'll be completely candid here. I've done that as a father, Israa, where I'll never forget my son, my oldest son, him at some point, I can't remember his age, but he's sitting at the dining room table by himself, which is odd because he has a lot of siblings, but for some reason he was sitting there by himself and he was eating, a bowl of cereal or something, just sitting there eating. And I think I told him, it was kind of that, don't just sit there, do something. I mean, grab a book. Do you have some homework? It was my own, I was projecting myself on him, but I just have no file for that. And it took a long time where now the family joke is that he taught me to, Dad, don't just do something, sit there.
Oh, I love that.
It's literally family vernacular based on my own. Yeah. Again, I projected that on him because for me, you're always, it's your story that you put in the book. You have to be productive. So I'm curious on play with this. Help me with this, because I've literally wondered where this shift came from.
Hmm.
Somebody pointed it out to me. I'm so sorry I can't give them credit because I've referenced this before, but they said back in the, I don't know, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, similar, you'd see a billboard that was bragging about kind of like affluence, and it showed leisure. It showed
Mm,
somebody on a, I'm exaggerating the point, but it was somebody on a yacht with a martini, probably a cigarette back then. And this was the wealthy, back then, I'm sure it was the white American man, but it was leisure is what they're showing.
mm,
Today, that billboard would be somebody in a car in New York with a driver on a laptop doing a Zoom call with their cell phone, answering something,
hmm.
and their assistant's next to them and they're doing the same thing. Where did we get that shift? What caused that shift from the bragging rights, the identity, the affluence going from leisure to this overdoing? Thoughts?
Yes, my goodness. So because I'm going to stay in like the emotional societal realm.
Yeah.
I don't understand fully like the historical sociological reasons why this shift happened, but I can say that somewhere along like the 70s and the 80s specifically, our work culture changed.
Okay.
And work, I think if I were to guess from a technological perspective, our access to work changed, the way we work
Okay.
changed, right? All of these like technological advancements made it easier for you to constantly be working, continuing into the 90s with the internet, and now there's no separation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be like this anthropological perspective of what was happening to our society and the stages of capitalism, which we're not talking about here, right? But that does something to our sense of identity,
Yeah.
right? That is the piece that I want to kind of dig deeper into. These status markers of being busy, needing to answer a lot of emails where you can't even have downtime, it makes you feel more valuable. It makes you feel more important in an organization. And so there's this idea that, okay, like if I do more, other people are going to think I'm important. First, I need to showcase that. Second, the people who are decision makers will see me and I will be able to rise the ranks, which is, a logical assumption to make. But I think the piece that I kind of really work in or explore is what is this rising in the ranks bringing to you at a personal level?
Yeah.
And that gap between my work is my work and I am a human person with many other things just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And so what's happened is our salaries, our job titles have become a part of who we are, and it becomes you, and it starts to kind of define your value and your worth within your community. And so we can't separate those two things anymore. And that's why people now brag about working on vacation, right? They brag about not taking the PTO that's unlimited, right? This whole concept of unlimited PTO is also like this interesting shift because nobody takes it,
Yeah.
right? And so I think the thing that I think about a lot is why are we defining our value with these external markers? And the way our society has changed in the last 40 years, I think these things have become status symbols. And that starts to define how good we feel about ourselves. And I would even shift this outside of the work environment and put it in even in our romantic relationships, right? Even in our families, like how good does my house look? How perfect is my Christmas card? How big is my engagement ring? Where are we doing our honeymoon and our baby moon? And all of those things have now just become how good I feel about myself.
Yeah.
And the more things we have, the more reasons we have to compare ourselves to each other and continue to strive for this American dream. But I think it's just kind of leaving a lot of people unhappy.
Okay. It reminds me, Isra, of it was Donald Miller, the author Donald Miller. He shared, I don't know if it was in one of his books or on my show, but somewhere it was a story of him going to a retreat center. It's kind of like a therapeutic retreat center. And for the first 2 to 3 days, the group, because they met in a group, a lot of it, they were not allowed to share what they do.
Mm.
And he says it was excruciating, and obviously showed a red flag to him that he couldn't say, I'm a really well-known author. I've sold a lot of books. I'm doing well. And he couldn't. And I thought about it again, maybe a week ago. A friend of mine sent me the book Untethered Soul, by, is that Michael Singer, I think. And in there, he talks about, who are you? And he goes through kind of a little story. Who are you? Oh, well, I'm a podcaster, or I'm a father, or I'm, Terry's husband, or I'm what. He said, well, those are all roles that you have, but take those away. Who are you? And he just keeps going down to the end. And it kind of leaves you with, do I know who am I outside of what I do, that I have even me studying this stuff, and I'm looking at it and go, I had to work on thinking who, at the end of it, I guess I'm Kevin. I'm a soul is sensing the world through this. And what value do I have unto myself and unto others? And it's really disconcerting to go through that, because to your point, do we know who we are? If we don't know, I guess is that the question. If we don't know who we are outside of what we do, there lies the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's why, coming back to something you shared earlier, I think that's why we can become, quote, addicted to productivity,
Yeah.
because it gives us a sense of belonging. And we are hardwired for seeking belonging. Like, that is just coded in our DNA. And what's happened is we have suddenly realized as a whole society that producing something gives me belonging. And I can give you examples from childhood. You bring home good grades. Oh my gosh, you're such a good son for us,
Yeah.
right? And so when you're not productive, that belonging is threatened. That is an existential threat for human beings. And this is happening at such a deep level, we're not even aware of it. But this need to show people that, hey, I have these things, I'm doing these things, I'm busy, I'm valued, I'm like, people come to me for things. It's all rooted in like wanting to belong. And so we can, if we don't have other outlets to feel belonging, we can overdo our productivity. And I think that is one of the things that I talk about a lot in the book is, how can we seek belonging outside of the things we produce? And one of the exercises, I think, is, can you write a paragraph about yourself without using any markers of productivity or achievement? Like, imagine you have to introduce yourself at a party, and it's very hard to do.
Well, help me, because I'm sitting here thinking right away. I'm thinking, okay, would
Yeah.
I show? Okay, I'm not going to say what I do, but my propensity would be to go after. I'm going to tell you what I'm interested in, because that gives you some concept of. Well, I'm afraid it's still a credibility. Is it still a credibility marker? So then, where do you go?
Depending on how you're utilizing that thing that you like to do, let's just call it a hobby. Depending on how you're utilizing that hobby, it will still be a credibility marker. But if you're using that hobby truly just to chill with yourself, and you're not trying to get better at it, not trying to make like an achievement out of it, not trying to win an award for it, it's really something you just enjoy doing, that gives me a lot of insight into who you are.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I love running marathons, and your intention for running marathons is feeling like a sense of confidence in yourself, it helps you like clear your mind. There it is, in a very like positive way, let's say. But if you're running marathons because you like to compete, you like to be the best, and you're like, I did a 10K, I'm going to do 20, and my friends are doing it, I'm going to beat them, and my time is this. Now you've made it an identity, like achievement marker that falls under the realm of like productivity, achievement oriented sense of belonging. So our intention really matters as to why we do something and how we connect and relate to it. And the other thing I'll say to this is, when trying to define yourself outside of these productivity and achievement markers, think about like adjectives that genuinely describe who you are. And of course, we can't go to a party and be like, hey, I'm a very kind person, right? That's like a interesting way of introducing yourself, I'd say. But you can kind of start modeling behavior that is truly just rooted in your values instead of an achievement marker.
But that would be interesting. So to go kind of think like a personals ad type thing, or if we had to go into a social thing with your name tag and it didn't say what you did or what your business was or whatever, but it said, these are my values, even more than interests. Because yeah,
Yes.
the interest is so, because my first thought when you were talking a second ago, if I laid out my interest, I'd have to be real careful that it wasn't still a vie for credibility. Oh, I'm,
Mhm.
I don't even want to say I'm a mountain biker. I say I'm an elite mountain biker.
Yes.
I am,
Yeah.
so it's not that I'm interested in personal growth. No, I actually have a personal growth business and
Hmm.
I'm still doing markers. But if I come and if you ask me what my value, my why is, so why I mountain bike, I go out into the woods. Why? Oh my gosh, it's where I find the most peace to my soul. Okay. Now I'm getting to the being. So to get us value focused,
Hmm.
help me with this one. Cause I played with the concept, but it feels like it's not fair or legitimate to go, who would I be if I was anonymous? Who would I be? What would I do if I was anonymous? Which feels unfair because, I mean, we wouldn't hardly have a reason for existing outside of relationships with other people. If I woke up tomorrow and nobody existed, I think I would, maybe eat enough sushi till I was sick and then just kill myself or something. Really, I mean, in all truth, because I mean, what's the
Yeah.
point? So people give us a reason, but if what I did was anonymous, what would I do? How would I live? Is that a
Mhm.
fair way to look at it, to try to take the credibility out of it, the
Yeah.
relationships of what I do?
Okay, let me think about the second question, but I
Okay.
want to say something about what you said earlier about being a mountain biker, right? So you
Yeah.
go out there and it gives you a sense of peace. And if we were to dig into finding more values that kind of can be defining characteristics of you that are not like credibility markers,
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I'm going to make some educated guesses here. If you are mountain biking in nature, that means you care about natural trails. Like you
Mhm.
care about the environment. That has like a ripple effect on the rest of your values, right? And so it's not just like you like mountain biking. It might just be that you also desire protecting our environment and a safe world to leave for your children so they can engage with that as well, right? It's not just that you have a podcast about self-help and personal development. You, in the 15 minutes or 25 minutes I've been talking to you, you strike me as a very curious and insightful person. And outside of the podcast, I'm willing to bet that you ask people in your life interesting questions about them or their perspectives about the world so that you can zoom out and look at the world in a broader way. Like that's the vibe I'm getting from you.
Mm.
So right. And so those are the things we want to stick to. We don't want to be like, hey, I have a productivity podcast business. It's like, I love learning from other people because
Yeah.
that helps me see the world in a different way. I love the environment and I want to preserve it for the future. And so that I can access like mountain areas that have bike trails that are not just concrete buildings. I'm sure mountain biking and biking in New York are like two different experiences. You are not going to have any ounce of peace if you're biking in New York City because there's like 17 different types of vehicles on the road,
Yeah.
not to mention pedestrians, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm getting an understanding of your values and the things you care about in the things that you do. And those are the things we want to keep close to our heart. So I definitely wanted to say that. Do you have a reaction to this? Because I know you actually asked me a different question, but I
Yeah. No,
answered something totally differently.
I do. You're right. It still brings me to the impetus to focus on why do I do what I do. I'll get back to what you said, to what is the value behind that? Because there have been so many things, so much of my behavior in my life. And I want to say that, used to be, I mean, I'm always still coming out of it, I think, but has been based on how I want to be perceived. It's the voids in me. I want to be, as a dad, especially, but even as a friend, I'm Superman. I want to fix everything and I am feeding the self-image needs in me. And if I step back and go, why am I doing it? That's been my work over the past years ago. Where's my heart in it? And realizing, okay, I'm jumping to help that person or help that kid or fix that thing. And I'm kind of bitter about it. They probably don't. I don't want help from somebody who's bitter. I want somebody who's offering it from a good heart. So I'm back to
Hmm.
the why, and then to the focus of your book, so much of the productivity was, yeah, feeding my need for self worth, self affirmation.
Hmm.
And to be
Hmm.
and to be truthful with it, one is to other people, but Isra, I also realized that some of it's even just to prove to myself. Like, even if other people didn't know, I'm still doing this stuff to try to make myself proud of myself, because apparently I'm not without what I do, or I haven't been. Is
Hmm.
that, it seems so externally focused, but I feel like I can suffer from this even from an internal errant drive to fill the voids.
Yeah, we can do that. And that is not always internal motivation. It's very much learned behavior about the definitions of what makes me good. So
Okay.
even if the world is not seeing it, what are the things that I learned make me good? What are the things that got me love and
Right.
affection and care from my primary caretakers? How did I behave then? That becomes your internal benchmark, like your checklist or your ruler to measure how good you are even in your own eyes. And so that's not always a bad thing. I think I really want to hone in on a point that wanting to do better and show up for people and be productive, like these are not negative things. These are not things that we need to get rid of. I think it's more about examining the intention with which you do it so that you can do it from a healthy place. If you're saying that, even if the world didn't know what I was doing, like I'm still wanting XYZ thing for myself,
Yeah.
my counter to that, as something to reflect on, is would you be able to love yourself if you didn't do those things?
Not in the past, Isra.
Yeah.
I even used to, I've been podcasting enough that there could be listeners that remember. I've talked so much about doing the things. Again, it's probably a double edge, not a double edge, but there's probably a balance. Doing the things that make you feel proud of yourself. I mean,
Hmm.
I do like that, but if I'm sitting there having to fill every second with productivity to be proud of myself, it's a problem.
Hmm.
I love your word intention. I wrote that down. What is
Hmm.
the intention
Yeah.
behind it? And it's probably a balance. And I think, you say this in the book, you don't use the word dualism, you used another word, but the concept of that, we tend to be either or, productive or
Binary thinking. Yeah.
binary thinking. Thank you. Exactly. That's what you wrote
Yeah.
down. And I wrote down, I think of that as dualism, but binary thinking, that we tend to be there, that there's a balance of that, of doing the things even that make you feel proud of yourself. But are you doing it from a healthy standpoint? Well, I guess I like your word intention. What's the intention?
Yeah. And then also, like, can you be proud of yourself for resting? Can you be proud of yourself for saying no when you knew you didn't have the capacity and then you said no and it was uncomfortable, but you protected your energy? Like those are things we can also be proud of. We don't only have to be proud of things that are achievement markers of success. I can be proud of myself for saying no to something on a Friday night and staying at home instead of being out till 2 o'clock in the morning and then being tired the next day. And right, like we need to redefine the things that we feel good about for ourselves.
Okay, let's talk about growth.
Hmm.
Actually, no, there's something I don't want to leave yet. Um,
Okay.
and because it's been such a stark, it's kind of one of those things like, "Oh, I wish I had known that." The idea of, you've mentioned it a couple times, the programming often from our childhood where well-intentioned parents, I had incredible parents and they just did what you think a parent should do. And what I have done
Hmm.
is give praise. Oh my gosh. I'm so proud of you for the A on your test. So proud of you for winning that race. So proud of you. I mean, it sounds, I mean, why wouldn't you do that as a parent? And yet that's what was done to me. And I'm going to own it for whatever reason, more so than my siblings and whatnot. I grasp onto that. That was me. That was what I wanted. Oh, I want that applause. I want that praise. And so the performance became my identity. And so as I've looked at that and I've had some counsel on some of the dangers of praise, I'm looking at my kid going, I don't want to just not acknowledge something they've done, but I've tried to change the praise from what they did to kind of how they were. I'm so proud of your effort. I'm
Mm.
so proud. I'm still
Mhm.
a little cautious of that, of when we have the praise, it can still be somewhat of a chain that we grab onto to get more. And so talk to me about that, because we're all products to some degree and we do it with each other. Oh my gosh, Israa, you wrote a book. You are a rock. You're so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts a pressure on you, or can. So
Yeah.
help me with praise.
Goodness. Well, I was also that kid. I
Yeah.
just want to say that. I was also like the getting the grades, being good, doing like 17 extracurriculars, like, always being the good girl. I'd be calling like the good girl conditioning. Like I was definitely that kid for sure. And what I would say to what you were just talking about is two things. Is one, I think it can be a it has like a little bit more of like helping kids and I'm not a parenting expert, by the way, but I just want to say, even if you were to give praise to an adult, kind of like flipping the statement and saying, you must be so proud of yourself for the effort you just put in. You must be. So it's
Wow.
less like you're seeking my approval. It's like
Wow.
trying to give it back to them. And the second thing is praise plus validation, I think, is better than praise only. So I'm so proud of you. This must have been so hard. I'm so proud of you, or you must be so proud of yourself. I saw you working like you pulled an all-nighter for this essay or whatever it is, right? Kind of like validating that it was challenging, that they overcame it, that it was hard, it must have sucked. Like giving them the whole picture instead of do good. And if you do good, I'm proud of you. Like, and even what you said, like, I'm proud of the effort. Like that's huge because that's saying to you, to the other person that it's not just the outcome that matters to me. It's the journey you took as well.
Yeah.
And then also like making sure that we don't allocate too much of their personality to being good, which is a challenging thing. And again, like that's like my whole personality was being the good child, right? And so how do we do that? We allow them to make mistakes. We allow them to be imperfect and messy and not make that a narrative about who they are as children or people. And that can really help break that chain between praise and belonging. Like, I'm proud of you even when you're messy. Like, I love you even when you make mistakes. Like, that's never going to go away. Like, those type of things. Um, and it's like, like you said, our parents, even for me, like well-meaning parents, right? I don't have any complaints about the way they handle things with me when I was younger. But it's like now up to me to break the chains, right? It's now up to me to make the choices differently and have like a different outcome for myself.
I really love your statement. You must be so proud of yourself, because it also calls, I mean, again, I'm thinking as a dad, it also
Mm.
calls me into helping them be in touch with their own feelings and opens the door if they happen not to be proud of themselves. And my first thought when I actually wrote it down is, I'm not saying you should be proud of yourself. I'm not
Mm.
putting that on them, but you must be. All right, I'm going to try it. Um,
Mhm.
so
Good.
I'm gonna play with that with my kids.
Yeah.
I'm interested on growth. You share your own story. You shared, let's say you depicted it in the book of a friend of yours and talking about reading fiction. She wanted you to read fiction, which
Yeah.
I do now again after I didn't for so long, thanks to my best
Right.
friend who kept giving
Yeah.
me fiction books and saying what a gift it was to his evenings and got me
Mhm.
back into it years ago. And I love going to bed every night because I've got a great fiction book to read. And if I read, yeah, anything, self-help, personal growth, it just gets my mind thinking. It's the opposite thing of what I need to go to
Yeah.
bed. But you had a friend advocate, recommend, read this book. And you're like, I'm not going to take that time to spend reading a fiction book. I'm going to read something to better me.
Mhm.
Okay. I love personal growth. Obviously this is, I mean,
Yeah.
I love, it's an inspiration to me. I love just the idea of what I don't know and expanding myself. And I think there's a healthy aspect of it here, but over here, I've done it in a lot of unhealth, trying to prove myself to myself and to others. Is well, heck, maybe you said it again. It's the intent. If I come back and go,
Mhm.
why? If I
Mhm.
go, is that, it seems like there's the measuring stick. Yeah.
I mean, there's that for sure. And it's also recognizing what you just said is like when I read personal development, it gets me more activated. So that is like a different state of being in your body. And when we over identify with personal development work, I think I call it personal development fatigue. When we do too much personal development, we start to see ourselves from a deficiency perspective. Everything is wrong. If I'm going to read four different books on four different domains of personal development, I'm going to walk away thinking everything is wrong with me. And that's going to really activate the toxic productivity mindset because now I'm like at a deficiency. Now I'm like, wait, I have to do more to become better. I need to read all of the therapy books that are coming out to become a better therapist. Like I need to read all of the writing books that are coming out so I can become a better writer. And now I need to like take a course in content creation because I need to become better there.
Yeah.
It just makes you feel like you're deficient if you do too much of it. So if like the primary word of this conversation is intention, the secondary word of this conversation, I would say, is balance.
Okay.
I'm not advocating that we get rid of those things. And I was in a place of really deep imbalance at that time. For me to think that reading beautiful stories that teach you about humanity and the world is a waste of time, it was just a sad moment for me because I grew up reading fiction like it was my job. I never thought I was going to write a nonfiction book. My dream was like, I'm going to write a collection of short stories, which I will do. But I also write short fiction myself. Like I have so many short stories just in my drive. But for me to get to that point, like that was a sad moment for me. That realization that I didn't value the beautiful things in life and I only was valuing how to get better, what to do with my time, how to optimize, how to maximize, right? And that's not a place where we can be for a long time without burning out because that's not what we're designed for. So having balance is really important. And that's what healthy productivity is. Toxic productivity is having a lack of balance in sense of belonging, what our output is, and how do we relate to other people through our achievements. And our emotions play a big part in it.
You mentioned in the book your own story of realizing that you were, I think you said journaling and meditating kind of, you didn't use the word bitterness, but it was just like, it was laborious. Again, the intent, it was just to check it off the list, like you're getting points in heaven or, whatever it is that we do with ourselves. And there was no joy in it, which I was thinking about because I can say that I do love the personal growth. When I get up in the morning, I'm so eager to read something that will inspire me or inform me. It's a joy. It's more so now, but it's been through a lot of this type of work to come out of even the idea. Gosh, I don't know if it was a show that I did or I was a guest on somebody else's show that I used to do these shows thinking about, I'm going to do a good show. We're going to do a good interview. I'm going to ask brilliant questions. And I finally got bored with it, honestly. And then it was, I'm only going to do a show if I would want to go meet that person like you for a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and talk about this stuff. If I don't want to do that, I'm not doing the show. And oh my gosh, it gave me great joy. And my downloads increased, I must say. So score one for authenticity.
Yeah.
You saying, it feels like, let me give this a preface. Israa, you just said a minute ago, how we relate to other people. I think that's what concerns me most with this. And I'll play with it. You've seen there's a meme I read once and it was, I saw this guy at Starbucks, sitting down at a table, just drinking coffee. That was it. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't reading a book. He was just drinking coffee like a psychopath. We're supposed to laugh because we don't see that. Yeah. Well, I've taken that and tried to be the guy, even in the coffee line, who's just sitting there checking, watching people and being aware and not on my phone. And you feel like, oh my gosh, I must be the only loneliest person in the planet because I have nothing to occupy my time. There's such social pressure. Yeah. Talk to us about that. Cause it is, as you go back to credibility, if your phone's not blowing up and you've got all this stuff and you just got leisure to go back to leisure, it kind of feels like, gosh, I must just be totally boring. I'm totally off the grid. That may be as big a deal as anything. Yeah,
absolutely. And that can be a really big and powerful driving force for us to do more. And so, for instance, like I think there's like a a client vignette in the story, in the book about one of my clients. And of course, these are composite clients. So,
Sure.
confidentiality is being preserved, but they had a really hard time. Like he has a really hard time staying at home. He needs to constantly be out, constantly be out, constantly be out. And he spends one evening at home and he doesn't know what to do with himself and he's miserable. And he comes to the session and he's like, well, not making enough plans didn't give me any rest. Like, why did you recommend this? This was horrible for me. And it's that mindset that, well, I should be out. I should be connecting with people. I should be going out. I should be on my phone, right? Like he goes on a dating app to scroll. And when we are not finding healthy relationships with people, we create unhealthy ways of relating with them, right? And it's either saying yes to every commitment because you're afraid that people will forget about you, right? There's these powerful emotions of shame and guilt and not measuring up to your peer circle that are driving that. And that's why we always need to be around people without even questioning, like, do we even like this person? Like that case vignette, he was also going on dates with people he didn't even connect with just to say that he was out on a date. Right. And what that does is it completely drains you of energy, of emotional energy, because you're performing, you're performing, you're performing, and it can lead to a lot of emotional burnout. So to me, it's really shifting, again, connecting with your emotional needs, connecting with your values, and there's the word again, connecting with your intention as to how you are relating to other people. If you're in a friend circle that is pressuring you to present a certain way, have a certain lifestyle, but it doesn't really align with you, eventually those friendships will start to weigh on you and you will become bitter. You will become resentful. You will have conflict. You will feel lonely. The biggest byproduct of toxic productivity is feeling lonely in our lives because we're so disconnected. If you're doing too much and all you have is the outcome as the goalpost, and it's a forever changing goalpost, by the way, you will always feel disconnected from the people around you because you're not pouring energy into building real relationships. You're not pouring energy into doing things that actually give you some value. An example is your podcast, right? Like you're talking about how you were like, I'm going to have the best interview. I'm going to ask all these questions, but the downloads increase when you tapped into your value of curiosity and learning. And there is no other replacement to that, to authenticity.
At the core of this message, it's hard for me to see anything beyond, give me a better term, because I'm thinking of my own self-confidence and my own self-worth. If I don't have that, I'm probably not going to succeed in getting out of toxic positivity, because I've got to some degree, relinquish how I think I come off to other people, at least, and be able to be okay. So it feels like even more, we're not, because self-awareness obviously has to be such a big part. What is my intent? But next to that, is it fair to say this is going to rest on to a great degree, I want to say self-confidence, but there may be, you tell me, on my self-worth.
Yeah, that's a word I lean on a little bit more, okay. Self-worth, because self-worth is our inherent understanding of the value we bring to the world, right? That has nothing to do with markers. And that's the difference between self-worth and self-esteem. Self-esteem is a variable. Like it is how you feel about yourself in reflection of your external achievements. So it can wax and wane as things change in your life. Our self-worth cannot be variable. It has to be consistent. How good a person I feel I am, whether I have a job or I got fired, has to remain the same. My self-esteem can take a hit naturally. I can be like, damn, I got fired. I need to improve, blah, 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 whatever, right? Whatever the reason is I got fired for. But my value and how good I feel about myself, how much worth I feel I bring to my relationships, that has to remain the same. How much my friends love me, that has to remain the same. And so self-worth is impacted by our emotions, like shame, like guilt, like feeling like we're imperfect, we are not good enough. So those are the mechanics of us undoing a lot of the negative impact on self-worth. And so that's why I chose those 4 or 5 things to talk about in the book, is because those things impact our self-worth. And the less worthy we feel, the more we want to belong. The more we want to belong, the more we want to do. So it's kind of this like little cycle. I call it the productivity paradox.
I it's interesting. You going back to reading beautiful stories. You talked about that with fiction, that I resonated when you said, I think you were talking about like movies, and you said even there you were going to watch things that were kind of intense, that were serious. Serious is the word that you used.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of chuckled, but not with a necessarily a good feeling to myself, because that's been me. Okay, we're going to watch a movie. It's got to be something that moves me. It's got to have some kind of meaning or redemption. To watch something that's just kind of, filler. I mean, I do like to be moved. Okay. So I'm playing and going, I'm coming back to as you talk about the intention, I do really like to be moved. And if I'm not, I just get kind of bored, but I need to kind of check that out too on, am I trying to justify the seriousness and what I'm going to get out of, even something like a movie or a book, because otherwise, if it doesn't feel, is it authentic, or am I just, again, filling the productivity mode? It feels like, a constant audit. I need it like my wearable device to go, okay, beep, 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 beep. Dude, you're doing that to be productive. Get off. Yeah.
So I'll speak to my experience with that, and maybe it resonates. So to me, the more I reflected on this habit that I had developed, it was almost like I was earning the right to sit down and watch TV. If it is moving me, if it has changed me, if I watch like a foreign language film that, about a war in some other country, now I've earned it. Yeah. Now it's okay that I sat down for 90 minutes and didn't read or do something else. And so it really, what happens is, if you only consume content that is heavy and moving and impactful, it can start weighing on you, because it's serious life world issues, right? But the world is more than just those things. And that's why rest, I try to put that within the definitions of productivity, because the world is also frivolous and silly and happy and beautiful, right? There's a place for Past Lives, which is a very serious and impact moving film. And there's a place for The Proposal, which is just a fun movie about the US green card system, right? And love. And so when did we stop valuing these things and only value things that are so moving in this very small, narrow definition? And so I think that was the work that I really had to do. Is I don't need to earn my rest. I can just watch a silly thing that has no added value, if you will, right? And the value it's bringing is I'm just laughing, right? I watched 2 seasons of Emily in Paris, and all I took from that was the beautiful outfits, but that was okay. It was okay, and it was good, and it was needed.
I feel like that word is huge. Earning.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, again, it's so relatable to my life, Israa. Even, it probably came from professional cycling and whatnot. And I feel like today, if we're going to have a fun meal, we're going to have pizza, homemade pizza, we do a lot, or, burger night or whatever. I feel better about it if I've earned it. If I've done a big ride, I've done a big run, some kind of big expenditure that gives me the right to do that. That's just in my mind. Nobody else knows. Literally nobody else. I'm doing it again to feed my own issues. I feel like earning, that's going to be a highlight from this. Back to the intention. I was like, I need my own intention list. What's the intention? Are you trying to prove, or are you trying to earn? Those are probably top of the list for me. Yeah. Thoughts? What about you?
Yeah. Prove, earn. And then on the flip side, to reframe it is, am I doing this just to be engaged? Just to feel joy? That can also be an intention. And a practice I built I guess we're coming up on a year to this, actually. Wow, it's August. A practice I built last year is doing puzzles. I used to think like actual puzzles, like 500-piece
Yeah,
puzzles.
yeah.
And I never did them because I was like, ew, what a waste of time. You just have to break them after, like, what is the point of this? I used to be very frustrated. My friend used to do a lot of puzzles. Her dining table always has puzzles. It's the neighbor in Toronto. But I started doing it. And just the mere act of doing something that I know is going to be destroyed, it is not giving me any achievement marker. It's not like something I can like tell. I'm not putting it up on social media. Like I'm not telling anybody about it. I'm literally just doing it. In the beginning, it was very frustrating. The inner critic, Isra, you just spent 40 minutes doing a Central Park puzzle that is not even finished. Like, what are you doing with your time? You should be finishing this book. I was finishing my manuscript at that time. You should have been writing. You should have been writing. But then as I got into it, it literally just kind of became this meditative practice for me. Even breaking it after it's done is just so liberating for me, from my productivity mind. Is I just spent 3 weeks on something that is going back in the box and no one is ever going to know about it. No photos are going to be taken. It was just so weird, but it also like it helped me flex that muscle for myself. Because I don't need to earn the things. I don't need to do it to show somebody. It doesn't need to have an outcome. In fact, you have to break it after it's done, but you just have to do it. And it helped me enjoy process over progress, process over perfection, process over outcome. And I think that's where the being is. It's in the process.
Okay, that one is acute to me, Isra. My dad, he was such a gift of a guy, definitely bred me in some of this productivity aspects
Yeah.
as well, which he would admit. Last December, healthy guy he was planning the next 20 years of his life. He's a well-known author and has done well. And he got a cancer diagnosis, pancreatic cancer, and given a very short time to live. And that short time actually ended up being 6 weeks. That was it, from diagnosis to the end. We came home from kind of the penultimate meeting with his doctor, his oncologist. It was kind of the final, you're done. We came home to his house and he walked over and started doing a puzzle. And I couldn't reconcile it in the moment. I mean, I kept my composure, but I inside I was going, what the hell are you doing? You just got a death sentence. There's stuff to do. There's stuff to do or to impart or whatever. And it was not that many nights later. We were up late with a bottle of wine. And I said that. I said, okay, this is it. You got to impart your very best. And two things from that now, and one I didn't realize till you said it or till you talked about it. One was his response was, I don't have anything. I've been given it every day. And I've been given my best. You've got it. I don't have something else to impart. That hit me hard. The puzzle though, and you kind of just said it, I think that's how he was processing. And I looked at it as this non-productive issue that kind of I've had a bad taste in my mouth about puzzles.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
No.
I'm sorry about your loss as well.
Thank you, but no, don't be. I should say thank you. It gives me that's how he did that. And if I look at that, what it brings me to is, I don't know how to say this because it's going to sound, help me with the vernacular. Because I almost want to speak to the productivity of non-productivity, of what are those things. Again, I've been trying to learn this for the past years of, I'm in danger of making the non-productivity productive, but I do see the value in it now, to know that non-productive time has such great value. And for me, I realize how much it adds to my vitality, my rejuvenation, and my creativity for when I do come over here to be productive. So in that way, it feels like the non-productive time, it actually is productive, but I don't want to just justify more productivity.
Yes, I understand that kind of strange catch-22, right?
Yeah.
And so for that, and by the way, I think this is something a lot of people question, and this is a question I get a lot because people are like, well, if we make rest productive, then is it rest? Right? Because I say this a lot where I'm like, we got to reimagine productivity to include rest. We need to redefine it to include rest. And to that, I'd say you just said my vitality, my creativity, and one more thing, right? We need to
Rejuvenate.
rejuvenation.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to actually shift the perspective of productivity as just being this like work outcome related thing. You becoming a healthier person is also important. And so and that can be put into the definitions of productivity. Because when we think of productivity right now, we're like outcome, 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 money, streams, likes, status, right?
Yeah.
But being a productive person can actually also mean somebody who values their wellness, who values their mental health, who values improving their sense of self, right? Like I'm doing this because we're going higher in our like abstract ideals of what it actually just means to be alive, right? And so utilizing moments of rest to just become more revitalized, that is a good thing. And it doesn't always mean that it has to be revitalized for your work. It can just be you revitalizing yourself and appreciating the world more, right? You being more rejuvenated and being more present for your children or your partner, right? We can just kind of break out of this idea that productivity is just doing, 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 doing more. But it's like taking the empty spaces and being in them so that you can be a better human, just in general. And I'll bring up something that I talk about in the book that I just chanced upon, just happenstance. Sometimes the universe is so beautiful. I don't even know why I was on like the website for the Japanese garden in Seattle. I don't know if you remember reading that part, but I had no intention of going to Seattle. I've never been there. I've never been to a Japanese garden. Somehow through some internet links, I ended up on their page. And I just like reading blogs and stuff. So I was just like, I went to their blog. It's like a museum. It's a Japanese garden museum.
Mm-hmm.
And on the blog, there was this article about the Japanese art of leaving negative spaces in paintings. So if you look at very traditional Japanese art,
Yeah.
you'll see that there's just like one stroke and the rest of the canvas is blank, right? And that is in contrast in that article to like some Chinese art, whatever.
Yeah.
But the point I took away from that was they say they do that, like traditional ancient Japanese artists did that, is because the negative space helps amplify that one stroke. And if we didn't have that negative space, we wouldn't value or see the beauty in that one stroke. It only looks as beautiful as it is because there's so much empty space around it. And there's a phrase, like it's like a Japanese phrase, which I'm not remembering right now, but I think this is like in chapter 11 or something. And I call it like the beauty of blank spaces. And that's what it is. And so we need to have these processing time where we're not being on and being productive in this like machinery way for us to see the beauty in the work that we do, for us to see the beauty in our life and even the broader world.
I had a physical reaction to you saying contrast and talking about this. When you first started talking about the art, I realized I love the type of art. And my mom actually is an artist and she does this. And some of the pieces in my house I have are where she does. I don't know the style. It's like sketch or something like that, to where it's mainly just, like gray lines. And then there's one red leaf, just one thing. And it's always, I just am drawn to it and I haven't known why. I love your term of contrast. It just gave me a paradigm shift of my work is creative. I think a lot like yours. Mm-hmm. And if I am just going and going and going and going, I feel like I'm kind of at 0.5% and I'm putting stuff out. And if I will stop, go over here and rejuvenate, renew, I feel myself, I can come back over here and do so much better work. And if you want to put that in kind of the work smarter type thing, I can do so much more creative work, beneficial work, valuable work in a smaller time if I will go over here and fill and kind of get out of it than if I just keep slogging away. And I had somebody recently on the show, I think it was Mike Zeller, and we were talking about creative space. And he says, yeah, I can only get about 3 hours a day out of myself of creativity. And I thought, I feel that too. I try to, but at some point it just kind of peters out. And now I'm getting better at just going, okay, well, just answer emails or do some of the busy work stuff now. And But Isra, a contrast to think about. I think I'm drawn to that. It just speaks of that. There's not the kind, if we're just being productive, that one, maybe we're doing it at a lower level of ability. If we're doing it
Yeah.
constantly, if we would separate it and give those, I mean, that's what an athlete does, which I should know as a past pro athlete. I mean, you have the
Mm.
times of rest to
Yeah.
come back and be totally at rest, totally fill, so you can come and just hit the zenith.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how we
Mm-hmm.
live life. We just get up
Right.
and, well, as you say, we grind every day. It doesn't make sense. I'm enamored with contrast. Thank you.
Well,
That's
thank you for saying that. And I totally agree. We tend to like treat our physical health in such a different way than our mental health. Like we need to take these breaks to become better. When we work out, we have rest days, right? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, don't skip rest day if you're doing weight training. But we need the rest day for our brains from like cognitive processing. Even creativity is cognitive processing.
mm-hmm.
And I think like I've cited some research in the book about like the optimal time of focus and attention. And it's like, I think we can at best go up to a max of 90 minutes, like sustained cognitive function before we start to decline in our cognitive function. So you might make more silly mistakes, or you might send like the wrong email and not add the attachment, like stuff like that. So I think it's really important to recognize that our brain is also not designed to constantly be processing information. And when we get that cognitive overload, we tend to do a poor quality of work. And the previous guest, I think, when they said that they can only get 3 hours of creativity, that's something I started noticing when I was writing the book, because I had never done such a long-term project before, right? And I just thought that I had this romantic idea of what a writer is. Like I'm like, I don't know, like Ernest Hemingway, like sitting on my typewriter for 8 hours and just churning out this beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
At best, my best writing days were 2.5, 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, the rest of it was me berating myself, right? The inner critic is so mean. It's like, oh my God, you should be working. You should have done 2 chapters today. You should have written 5 chapters in this week. And the thing gets on because you're comparing yourself to these like ideas of productivity that I should be writing for 8 hours a day. That is ridiculous. And so reading that research helped me really shift. And I started chunking my writing work very intentionally. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to write for 2 hours in the morning, and then I'm going to go for a walk or go to the gym, or see a friend, and then go back to writing.
I'm laughing at myself because I do a lot of getaways more. So I did a lot. I did a lot when I was writing my book, and
Yeah.
now I'm doing them more just as a part of life. I've got more
Yeah.
kids out of the house and I've got more time, and I'll go away. And when I am looking for these times to really create something that I care about and really give value. So let's say, creative, let's say writing or whatnot. I think I still struggle with it, but I'm finding peace with it. And I feel like it can sometimes take me most of the day to get maybe an hour and a half of really great stuff out. And it took me making breakfast and dawdling around with some emails and go on a ride or a run. And then maybe even just scroll something, look at what are my kids doing on social media, whatever. And meanwhile, but I know my brain's thinking. Even when I'll come up with something that I think that's important, I'll end up going off here and seemingly not spending valuable time, but my mind's coming, and then I hit it. And then boom, here's this great download. And I've had to come to peace with going, if today I got an hour or 30 minutes or an hour 30 of just, brilliance, of something I feel really solid about, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. As opposed to the day where I just churned it out. And well, you talk about it in the book, the difference between busyness and productivity.
Yeah.
Is that what we're hitting on? If you can have an hour of productivity, that's better than 10 hours of busyness.
Yes.
Maybe that's what I'm getting.
Absolutely. I would fully agree with that. And, I think that that's so true, because like what's happened is we think productivity is quantity, right? We think productivity is quantity, more. But to me, like productivity is more quality. And now at this point in my journey, I had drank the productivity culture Kool-Aid for sure. for years. And I think, I mean, I do still sometimes struggle with it. Like I'm, finalizing my bonus chapters right now. And I had the same kind of thing again where I was like, I have to finish both of these chapters in like 4 days. But then I was like, why? Like, why do I have to do that? I don't have to do that. And so the thing I want to say to people is focus
Mm.
on the quality of your outcome instead of like getting more things checked off. And sometimes you really have to question the things that are on our checklist. Like, why are they even there? Like, do they align with my values? What is my intention for doing these things? And the second thing is this is a journey. I've heard you mention a few times, you know, this is something I used to struggle with. And some days I still struggle with it right now. And I think that's exactly it. We never arrive at this destination of self-actualization and then become this like incredibly different, healed, better version of ourselves, right? We are constantly making those attempts. We're constantly becoming and becoming and becoming. And I think that sometimes that's seen as like a deficit, like, why aren't you there yet? But I think it's so beautiful because we constantly evolve, we constantly change, we constantly grow. And so to me, the whole thing is don't read this book, mine or yours or anybody's, and then be mean to yourself about not getting to this destination of like, being the best version of yourself. I think just focus on the process of continuing to become. And what makes us better is that we become better at managing it. So maybe for me, honestly, like I might never fully get rid of the voice that is telling me to do more. Like I don't like from where I'm sitting, my vantage point, like I'm in my mid 30s, like I don't imagine that it's going to disappear. But the thing that I have noticed compared to my 20s is it doesn't overwhelm me as much anymore. It's easier for me to kind of like push back against it. It doesn't derail my work day. And I'm just better at managing at the emotions that come up. So that's where my strength is. And I think that's what we all should be striving for is just becoming better at managing it.
Well, you've come to your awareness a lot earlier than I did. I'm not in my mid 30s. And Israa, it's been significant for me to realize you just used the word destinations a couple of times that has been my world, goals, and you go after these achievements and the destinations. I mean, again, I think as an athlete, you're going for the finish line. That's the point, right? And yet realizing that it's not. I mean, all these things, if I list out I think about it every time I'm on somebody else's show and they're going through the bio and the list of achievements and whatnot. And none of those, I never arrived. And what you just said, realizing I'm never going to arrive. And to that point, I don't want to. How boring would that be? It's like living out here in Colorado. You get to the top of the mountain and you look around. It's a cool view, but then you just go back down. The whole story was on getting the way up there. You don't sit around and talk about, oh my gosh, it was this climactic, orgasmic experience at the top. No, it's not. All the fun's on the way up. And then you're just waiting to go plan the next ascent, and to take that and go, none of these destinations I'm going to arrive at. The joy is in that you just said it, the process, the path. And if I look at that, it changes my paradigm. It doesn't mean that I don't want the goals. I want a direction and those are inspiring, but to know that that's like to use the drive concept, that's the scenic overlook or the pit stop for resources. I made $1 million. That's great. And then the next day happens and you want something to go forward towards. Arriving would be, well, to me, I can't imagine. I love it. It was a credit to my dad. He said, why would I ever retire? I enjoy my life. It would be so boring to retire and do what? Go play golf every day. That feels significant. It's a paradigm shift on this productivity. Even for you to say that could sound depressing to some people. You're never gonna. What would you say it that way? If the point is not to arrive, the point is the process and growth that changes the paradigm significantly.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I love the analogy about the story is in the hike up, not in the view, because I'm not a very outdoorsy person, but when I travel, I'll do like the hikes that, you should be doing in that place. And I've always been a little disappointed when I get to the top because I'm like, okay, like sky and clouds, like, but the most fun was like trying to make it there, falling and like just trying to get to the top of this hike, or B, just the fact that you actually made it, right? After 7 hours of hiking, which was the most recent one. But when we got to the top after 7 hours, I literally like turned to my sister and I was like, okay, this is beautiful. But the path there was so much prettier, in all honesty. This is like in Madeira. The path there was so much prettier. And then, of course, we had to make our way down, and that was a whole different journey. But I love that analogy that you said. And what I would say to people is not that, oh, the destination sucks, because yes, that can be depressing to people. What I would say is don't believe that you will arrive at the destination and stay. You will have to continue. Like you will get to one point of self-awareness and then you'll be like, okay, like now I have to move ahead. In that way, we're constantly moving. We're never going to arrive and stay. So yes, you want that direction. You want to move towards like having a better relationship with productivity or reimagining what rest looks like for you or having better boundaries. But you might struggle with it again because you keep moving, and that's okay. Like struggling with something doesn't mean that you failed at it. And that's another thing that feeds the toxic productivity cycle, how allergic we are to quote failure or struggle. And that struggle means like if I struggle with an emotion, that means I'm unhealed. That's just not true. Struggle is like a part of the human experience. The strength is in how you are able to react to it or respond, I would say, and adapt. Respond and adapt. Like that's what we're constantly doing.
It's interesting you talk about that. I mean, right now, so you've got, your books coming out, and to think of that destination, like that's it. You're going to stay there. Your book came out, Israa. You are now, I mean, you're Oprah, the president, Jesus, Buddha. You got it all. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how depressing is that? And I do feel like, again, not to minimize the goals, but they're all somewhat like your hike. They're a little anticlimactic. I mean, I wrote a book, it was great, and it'll add to, the next success and the next thing. It's great, but you're going to move on from there. And to hold it to some degree, you were talking earlier, talking about the serious, the book needs to be serious, or the movie or the whatever needs to be serious, that I need to get a tattoo because I continue to forget, just to hold things lightly. Why? When did it become so serious? When did I become God? When did I become that important?
Yeah.
We're back to self-worth. Even that. Talk about that. Where do you, to look at that balance of not to minimize yourself? I'm not worth anything. No, you're valuable. You're incredibly valuable to, you can be to people's lives and to whatever. And I'm not God. Even to my kids, I am not the end all savior to their lives. I'm here. I've got a role and some responsibility, but they're going to do, I am not, again, that I've got to hold that lightly. And there's I almost think about it like you said, balance is tension, somewhat of a tension.
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting perspective. I've never actually quite heard someone talk about it in this way, of like, but you're right. Like sometimes we can take our productivity so seriously because we're taking ourselves too seriously. We're just like, and sometimes it's just not that deep. It's just not. It doesn't have to be. And I think the two things that came to me are, one is we tend to personalize everything, right? Like we tend to be in this like, and this is just like human nature. We have this like thing called the spotlight effect, that everyone's like, we walk into a party, we think everyone's looking at us, right? It's very high in teenage years when we think everybody's looking at that one little zit that we have on our face, but it actually continues on in our lives. And we start to think that we have this like pivotal role in people's lives because we personalize a lot of their behaviors. And this is like a little outside of the book. I think I'm just reacting to what you're saying. And so we tend to over identify with our role in their lives. And you might have heard of the phrase like main character energy. It's like floating around in the internet, over the last year and a half. But I think that's like a really harmful way of looking at the world is you're not the main character in everyone's life. Even as a parent, I
Yeah.
don't have kids, so I hope not to offend anybody. But
I've got 100 and I'm just keep going. Yeah.
But yeah, but even as a parent, like you're not the main character in someone's life. And so you
Mm-mm.
can take off that mantle. Like you can take off that crown. You can enjoy, you can be frivolous, you can be silly, and it doesn't always have to be this deep. And I think that that has something to do with like an over identification with responsibility when we're over functioning. And that's the connection to toxic productivity. Um, and it's not in the book, but it's in the bonus chapter. I'm just remembering this, is over functioning. We tend to over function. So we are over functioning at a physiological level. And as an athlete, like, the adrenaline, norepinephrine cycles and systems in our body, if we're constantly fatiguing them, we do this like crash and burn type of thing hormonally, but it also affects our emotions, right? So we are over functioning emotionally as and I think like some people will call it self-importance, but I don't think that's what it is because that has like a very negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
It's really more to me in my worldview, it's over-functioning. Let me fix this for you. Let me do this for you. You should do it my way. Let me read more so I can be better, so I can be there for you. Let me watch this more serious thing so I can activate my whole body. And then I'm like, damn, I earned this rest.
Yeah.
And so it's that over-functioning. And when we're not over-functioning, we feel guilty, which guilt is an action oriented emotion. It's pushing you to do more. So it's like the cycle.
Well, it's so you talk about this when you talk about over functioning, you talk about this in the book, and we come back again to boundaries.
Yes.
Would you say that like I had a therapist bring to me, gosh, years ago, on the aspect of narcissism that often
Mm,
narcissism can be fed by a lack of boundaries. Uh,
mm,
and I hadn't
yeah.
thought about it that way. And now I'm thinking this aspect of over functioning, toxic productivity. I know for me, it was such a stark lack of boundaries. Yeah. If
Mm,
you have a need, and yeah, again, with me, with my family, friends, whatever, you have a need. Yes. I had a business a decade ago in helping people pursue self-employment, but it was very successful and valuable. And I burnt myself out by taking so much responsibility, way too
mm,
much for everybody in there. And that was on, it sounds altruistic, but I was just feeding my own, void and need and no boundaries at all.
mm,
And so as I
mm,
read your book and you speak to this, that it pulled me back again to, I won't or some of the reason or the foundation, the fuel for my toxic productivity was no boundaries, no awareness of myself. And gosh, I come back to, and I don't think I haven't held this word up in importance. And I'm going along with contrast is
mm.
intention. That's
Yeah.
a stout word.
Yeah, I think that our current productivity culture,
Yeah.
right, in the world that we live in, really values a lack of intention. The
Mm.
less intentional you are, the better worker bee you're going to be. Because you're just going to do what I'm telling you to do, right?
Yeah.
And that is our contemporary work culture, by the way, right? So hierarchical. If I'm asking you to be available at 8 p.m., you have to be available. Like we are just on autopilot. We are on autopilot in our relationships. Like very few people are, I think some things are changing, but historically, like people are like, okay, like I have to go to school, I have to get a degree, I have to get married, I have to buy a house, I have to have a pet, and then I have to have kids, and for that I have to have a car, and blah 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 blah. Right? Like we're on autopilot. We're not questioning these checklists, these milestones, these things that we compare ourselves on to other people. And so intention, I think, is a huge antidote to feeling unfulfilled in life. And I was very unintentional about a lot of things in my life. I was just like, yeah, of course I have to do this. I have to be this way. I have to always be the best at every single thing I do. I never thought about why I needed to be the best, why I need to be perfect, why I need to be good. It just like, it was not a question. I just
Yeah.
like unintentionally living my life on autopilot. And so I think it's really important to be intentional about what we do. And it is a very radical thing. When we start being intentional, it raises a lot of questions. Like, I mean, you're a parent. Like, imagine if your child started questioning everything that you were putting on the table. It'd likely be very frustrating, but it is a very important life skill to have an intention, to build intention through questioning and curiosity about why you do the things you do.
I'm thinking about it and thinking about
Mm.
so much of my past, and the
Yeah.
intention of why I was doing something was to earn affirmation, approval, applause,
Mm.
whatever from
Yeah.
someone else. Why? Because I apparently need it. My self-worth
Well,
isn't intact.
yeah, I would say everybody needs it, but at that time, you were not able to give it to yourself. And for that reason, you were looking outwards to fill that, right? So it's like, again, it's like this, how can we turn the lens inwards and have self-worth that is inherent? And of course, look, validation is important. Praise is important, but it cannot be your only source of feeling good about yourself. Everybody needs to feel good about it. It's a basic core human need. Everybody needs to feel good about themselves, right? But we can't rely on other people only to fill that need. And so that's why having blank space, rest, having values, living aligned with your values, having intention, having boundaries, all of those things help you see your own value, irrespective of if other people do or don't. That has to be the foundation. And then, of course, you want the validation from other people. There's nothing wrong with that. It just can't be your only source.
Would you draw a distinction between want and need in that? I mean, of course, I would be happy if you said, "Oh my gosh, this is the best conversation I've ever had."
Hmm.
I wouldn't be offended at all if you said that.
Yeah.
Now, do I need that though? If I don't get that, am I going to be crushed? If I think, it was fulfilling to me,
Hmm.
um, and play with that, because I do struggle with that aspect of, especially with my own past, knowing that I was striving and producing, trying to get fill that void for me. And now I'm prone to go, and I don't want to polarize and be binary, in it and go, okay, I don't need anything. But I do somewhat conceive of, okay, would I like that? It'd be great. And I am looking for some testimony as to whether I'm
Sure.
doing a good job. And I'm not just going to say, yeah, I'm the best podcast host on earth, and nobody's testified to that. But
Hmm.
do I need it? Do I
Hmm.
need it back to my own self? Or are we back to intention? But your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So wants should be like non-mandatory, right? But needs are mandatory things. And so sometimes what happens is we transfer a want and make it a need. And if someone can't meet that need, then we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. I'm like a loser. I'm just the worst person in the world if my podcast is not the best podcast in the world. So like, let me give you an example,
Yeah.
actually. Um, my book is coming out. It's the first thing that I'm putting out in the world in this way, right? Would I love for people to like it and leave good reviews and tell me that it changed the perspective on productivity for them? Yes. But if a negative review makes me question my entire like worth, like, oh my gosh, like US Weekly said this book was garbage, and now I'm like, damn, I'm a horrible writer. I'm never gonna write again. I can't believe I wasted like 3 years of my life. Like, and I get down on myself like that, and I start putting like this negative pressure on my value. That's when you're in like a red flag zone. So that's how you kind of differentiate between want and need.
Yeah.
Like the want is, yes, I should have it, but if I don't get it, it's not going to derail my entire sense of self. But there are some needs that are like our core human needs of connection, of safety, of affection, right? Those things are emotional needs that we must have in our relationships. I think what we're doing is we're using productivity to meet those core needs.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. We have to use productivity to meet our wants and leave it at that. And those are non-mandatory things. And we can find true, sustainable, healthy ways to meet our emotional needs. Does that answer your question? I feel like I just
No, I'm sitting here taking
said
that.
a
No,
lot.
it was great. I love that aspect, even of a want is not mandatory, a need is mandatory. and I'm going to continue to question what are my mandatory
Hmm.
needs. And, again, not to polarize too much, but I want to be able to fill most of those, well, with my self-worth on my own
Yeah.
without the need for others. Okay. This is something that I have chewed on a little bit, and I thought, and it came back again reading your book,
Hmm.
Isra, and it was we're looking at how we're back to the doing and being. Okay. How am
Hmm.
I being that apparently, right. That I've historically been being the doer. I'm the doer. That's how I judge myself. That's how I think other people, kind of the spotlight thing you're talking about. Everybody's looking at me and, am I being
Hmm.
productive? I mean, I've literally gone through a lot of life thinking, okay, if I was videotaped right now, you know, would I look productive and
Hmm.
valiant and, integrity and all this kind of stuff? If I flip it though, not flip it though, if I look at who do I want to be around? Who do I want to be around? Who am I attracted to?
Hmm.
It's not the super productive person who's going
Hmm.
100 miles an hour. Who am
Hmm.
I really drawn to and has value in my life? It's people who are available for me.
Hmm.
It's people who are humble,
Hmm.
and it's people that are confident.
Hmm.
Well, that doesn't fit into toxic productivity.
Yeah.
And if I want to be, again, it's still selfish, but if I want to be the type of person that has value in people's lives, it is not grinding away and being productive. And those kind of people wear me out, probably even more so because I'm already striving not to
Hmm.
be that person. So to be with that
Yeah.
person, it's like, oh my gosh, can I be with somebody who is, again, the people who have influence and value, and I want to attach myself, I'm attracted to. Those are my thoughts. I wrote them down as I was reading your book. Available, humble, and confident. Those are not traits of toxic productivity.
No, but those traits are feeding the core emotional needs of a human being, right? So you have these spaces where you are getting your emotional needs met in a healthy way. And I think like that's how we want to view our own work is like, am I being this person to myself? Am I
Yeah.
available for myself? Right. I think like that's like it's like a very interesting way to kind of start viewing the kind of person you want to be so that you can have a healthy relationship with productivity or achievement or even yourself. Because who do you like to be around? Or like a very common thing that we do in therapy is asking the question, like, who do you feel the safest around?
Yeah.
Right? Like true emotional safety. And that means you don't have to perform. You don't have to be on. You don't have to be like sacrificing yourself to be present, to be there for them. Like, who is that person for you? And then the work is, then can we shift that so that you can also be that person for yourself? Because sometimes we are not safe people for ourselves,
Yeah.
especially in the toxic productivity mindset. That's why I really talked about the inner critic. The inner critic makes our mental space emotionally unsafe, harsh, punitive, judgmental, shaming, right? It makes us feel small and everybody has it. Everybody struggles with an inner critic. And we get it for various different reasons. And so how can we make ourselves emotionally safe for ourselves
Yeah.
so that we don't have to be so reactive with doing, 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 doing? So,
Okay. So your term in your book, that one of the many that jumped out to me was emotional foundation.
mm,
And it especially did because I have another project that I'm working on, really important to me. What it came down to is looking at the power of someone's worldview.
mhm,
That's what you wrote. I pulled it out of the book. Emotional foundation, the underlying structure that defines both our internal and our external worldview. Though I'm tempted to say worldview, and just as you were talking a minute ago, worldview slash personal view.
mhm.
My emotional foundation, and if it's that the world is out to get me and I don't add up, that's a worldview that is a faulty, crumbly emotional foundation. Fair?
Yeah. Or like, for instance, with shame, um, if I don't do XYZ thing, I'm like ashamed of myself and people will reject
Yeah.
me. That's a worldview. If I'm not the helper, my partner will abandon me. That's a worldview. If I'm resting, I'm lazy. That's a worldview. So these are like guilt, shame, perfectionism. These are so powerful, but they're so deeply rooted that we don't really recognize when they're active.
Okay, you know what? Let's go. I want to dig deeper on because it feels so weighty to me. And you talking about
Yeah.
it deeply rooted that you're taking this. So here's a message that people can easily hear. I may even put this in the intro because you could take this, go toxic positivity. Yeah, doing too much. Okay, yeah, sure, that's bad. I want people to dig in deeper. And so to
Yeah.
say that this is, if it's fair to say, this is going to be guided by your core emotional foundation that we all have one, even if, like me, we haven't been aware of it in the past, but we all have it. So I want to give some more value to that. And I'm going to pull out what you wrote in the book. Again, I'm
Mm,
going to read it for everybody to hear. The underlying structure that defines both our internal and external worldview, how
mm,
you look at it. And you said it's formed by our early experiences, our temperament, our personality, our beliefs, our value system, and our emotional dynamics. And then you go on to say it guides your thoughts, decisions, and our habits. And my notes after that is that it becomes what we believe is reality. And
mhm,
it's not. It is
mhm,
my word is it's a construct. It's a construct that we have made up through those six things that you listed out there.
mhm.
And for us to take your message on toxic productivity, I got to look in the mirror and look at my emotional foundation. Would you say that's what's driving us?
Yeah, I definitely think that it is a big, it's a big concept. There's so many words in there, but
Yeah.
very simply put, it really is about understanding what is the true motivation behind the choices you make.
Yeah.
And it's and the way we can kind of do this is by observing our patterns. So it does require some reflection and like, oh, how do I constantly do things? But it's so deeply rooted that a lot of times people think that this is just who I am. This is how I always was. It's been working for me, right? Like, so we just think this is who we are. But the
Right.
truth is, our emotional foundation is a byproduct of learned behaviors, learned messaging. And I'll share my own example. I grew up in a home, and like, again, my parents are lovely, but I grew up in a home that did not model rest. And this is honest to God, I have never, ever, ever seen my mom just chilling on the couch doing nothing or watching TV until she became over 60 years old.
Hmm.
Like, even on her day off, she has to be like cleaning the cupboard or doing so. She'll find something to do. She'll go downstairs to the storage unit and take everything out on her day off. And so that's just an environment that I grew up in. And that created a worldview for me that people who are resting or just lying on the couch watching TV are wasteful, idle, lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody said this, but it was just in the environment around me. And up until maybe 2 years ago, I believed that. I was like, well, this is just who I am. Ugh, I just can't watch TV. I just can't do it. I don't care about TV shows. Or I just was like, I just can't be at home. I can't lie in bed for too long. I have to get out. And this idea just was just who I am, right? But I didn't realize the harm it was causing me.
Oh, okay. I want to look at the self image because you and I are separated at birth, apparently, because I so resonate with that. And it took me so long to realize I had imprisoned myself
Mm,
with these productive ideas. It was like productivity ideals that this is who I
mm-hmm,
want to be and I want to be seen as.
mm,
And it's interesting again, when just what we talked about a minute ago, it's not who I'm attracted. I don't want to be around that person. It wears me out. You're exhausting. Like you just talked about, it's exhausting, but that's who I wanted to be. Those are two disconnects. I don't want to be around that person, but I want to be that person. And it's interesting. You said it just a second ago. It's been working for me. That feels like another cultural rub that we have to come to grips with because there is applause for that somewhat. I
yeah.
mean, some of that stuff we're not talking. I mean, you might get the raise, or you might get the promotion, or come off like you're just killing it by
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
exhaustion, and that you live at the office or whatnot, that there is some applause out there that at some point we have to come to grips with, of going, am I
Yeah.
working for that? Is that fulfilling? Is that the end goal for me? I want the applause. I want the achievement, or I want me.
Mm-hmm.
That feels very real and tangible, and kind of a come to Jesus look in the mirror. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
guess we're back to intention, aren't we?
There's that for sure. And I think also kind of balancing short-term gain
Okay.
loss versus long-term gain and loss. I think there are seasons in life, maybe you do. So I'll take a step back. I think a lot of the things I talk about in the book have to be there's a caveat that there's a lot of privilege that is required in order to take breaks or to rest. And so I want to hold space for that. And I want to say that there are life circumstances that sometimes leave you with no choice but
Yeah.
to be toxically productive. That's why my parents are the way they are. And I share their story in the book, right? These are people who were displaced internally by a war once in their generation, once in their parents' generation, right? These are people who had to start over in 4 different countries before the age of 40.
Mm.
So they don't have a choice. Like they just have to be moving, right? And so I think it's really important that to remember that sometimes in your life there are going to be seasons that are going to ask of
Yeah.
you these things, and you have to do the cost benefit analysis and say, you know what? I need this raise because of XYZ reason. I am going to grind to the bone for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months to make this happen. And then I'm going to not do that. I think we have to make those choices that when it's not an actual need for you, then you need to be able to step back and take rest and, you know, engage in joy and do all of those things. Because yes, this is something that is not afforded to everybody. And I want to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you sometimes have to tap into it. My thing is, don't make it your whole life. Don't make it your whole personality. And it was Ariana Huffington's story that really caught me. I was probably just around turning 30 when I read about this event that happened in her life. I don't know if you know, but she collapsed in her office uh, because of overworking exhaustion. She was really trying to take Huffington Post to the next level.
Yeah.
She hadn't slept in a couple of days, actually, because I think they were going to be acquired. Something was happening. She is grinding herself to the point where she collapsed in her office, and to add insult to injury, she hits her face on the corner of a table and just splits her face open. But she's passed out, so she has no idea that she's now lying on the floor of Huffington Post in her office. Someone finds her that way. And that became like a true wake up call for her to be
Yeah.
like, I did the grind in trying to make Huffington Post what it is, but now I can stop. Now I don't have to keep living like this. And anyway, then she went on to build Sleep Revolution, which talks about the importance of healthy sleep and why it's so necessary. But I think that was the call for me where I was like, this is a woman I admire, but like her life, what I think is so great about her life is actually killing her. And so I think I'm just all over the place right now, Kevin, but I think what I want to say is you just be really mindful about when you're tapping into this. Don't make it your whole life.
Okay. No, I appreciate the story. I did not know that story.
Okay. Yeah.
And gosh, so play with me on it a bit, because
Yeah.
uh, it concerns me to even hear that, to go, well, dude, if I can be her and achieve that level of success, it's worth it to pass out and whatever. Now she can
Mm,
go and focus on sleep
mm,
and stuff, because
yeah.
she's a millionaire, or multi, whatever,
Yeah.
billionaire. She's famous, she's whatever.
Yeah.
And that, I concern myself with that concept. Gosh, go back to my dad, who got a diagnosis and died 6 weeks later. I have another friend who a few weeks ago, family vacation, he's younger than me, family vacation, and he collapses over and couldn't be revived. That's it, end. And to look at that, not to just play the last day of your life card, but I do struggle with,
Yeah.
is the end goal worth it? No matter, if it's big enough. And yeah, again, cycles. You're gonna write
Yeah.
a book. You're gonna go on the promo tour. You're gonna do that. So it's
Yeah.
a cycle
Yeah.
of some over functioning. but if you're intentional about it, you know it, the people around you, you let them know, hey, I'm not going to be as available for whatever, but there's
Mm-hmm.
an end in sight. Like you said, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go on forever. And I've done that
Mm-hmm.
so many times. I like that, season cycles, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point I've got to look at an overall budget. If we were looking at money, hey, we're going to spend X amount, but we can't do that forever,
Mm-hmm.
or it's going to manifest itself. Because what you're talking about with Ariana, I mean, my gosh, you ever been at an all-time high of burnout, it seems like. Which
Mm-hmm.
that was my wake up call. Were some
Yeah.
specific instances where it was my passing out and cutting my face open in
Yeah.
essence that brought me to that. But
Yeah.
leading up to that, I caused a lot of damage. I don't
Yeah.
want to wait to burn out or passing out
Yeah.
for the wake up call.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think like Sheryl Sandberg's first husband unfortunately also passed away, like your
Hmm.
friend, like just on the treadmill on vacation, couldn't be revived, right? This is a very real problem. Our addiction to productivity has a huge health impact. And, what if that person hadn't found Ariana on the floor, right? What if she actually had a head injury instead of a face injury that caused brain bleeding? Like, I mean, like the what if scenarios are endless, but I think that's where we tap into our intention, Kevin, right? That's where we're like, why am I doing this? What is it going to get me? Okay, if I have a goal of making $1 million before I'm 40 years old, why? What is that going to bring me? What is that going to give me? What am I willing to sacrifice for that? What need of mine is being fulfilled? Like those are when we set goals for ourselves, we have to ask ourselves if it is our goal, is it an inherited goal, right? Is it a goal that we're just reflecting from the mirrors of society? I think it's really important to ask these questions because I don't want people to think that we're just going to live willy-nilly and have no goals and direction and productivity is bad. Like that's not my message here. My message is tap into your own sense of self in order to have a healthy relationship to productivity. I live in New York City. I meet a lot of very overachieving, overfunctioning, ambitious
Sure.
people here,
It
right?
seems like the
And
overfunctioning capital of the world, maybe.
of the world, But I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a party and I've heard somebody say, my goal is to hit like 2 million in revenue before I'm 38. I want to retire by 40.
Yeah.
Why are we making up these numbers? Like, who created that goal for you? And we just heard about this Morgan Stanley guy. He was in his early 30s, the VP, who worked 104 hours and then died. This young man just died, right? Because who works 104 hours? But again, we have this mindset, we gotta finish this goal. I have to have $1 million by I'm 32. I have to have, like, we don't need these things. And so to me, I'm like, let's question that. Let's put our productivity energy into the things that genuinely will bring you closer to your goal, not some made up goal that you inherited from the world or from Instagram. And I think that your question about, if someone is a multimillionaire, is that injury worth it? I think different people will have different answers to that.
Mm-hmm.
My perspective is that I don't think anything is worth bodily harm. And maybe I come from like a very woo woo mindset. But I just don't think that, what are you going to do with the money if you have a brain injury? What are you going to do with the money? Like, like I sometimes, again, meet these people who are working these insane hours here in New York. And yeah, they're making 3 times the amount of money I make, but they don't have the time to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
They are not able to take vacations. They end up buying a bunch of really beautiful watches because they have the money, but like they can't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what are we even doing? But I think that also kind of taps into a different conversation about politics and society and capitalism, which has not a lot to do
Well,
with
but
my book.
it still goes into the goals in the, not, if we can not minimize them, but also not glorify them, that as a guy who's got a list of, I mean, again, I think about it every time I'm on somebody else's show and they're reading my bio and it's all this list of things. And I'm looking at it and going, I question a lot of it. None of those, I never arrived. I never,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
were great. They were good, but I wish I could go back in time and go, yeah, but Kevin, have some joy in this day.
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
if it's the journey that matters and none of these
mm,
things are going to fix everything or make everything perfect or whatnot, I want to, again, hold them. I mean, I've got goals. I've got some big achievements that I want to see them happen because I think they matter.
yeah.
And, and can I hold them lightly? Again,
Yes.
I'm not everybody's savior. It's not that
Yeah.
big a deal. If I died tomorrow, my kids, would be disappointed and whatnot, but the world doesn't end. And
Hmm.
again, we're back to that. I don't know if we want to say balance or tension between not just minimizing the goals, but also we've gotten into this culture of, yeah, like you said, oh, I want to hit 1 million before that. I did that too. And I go back
Mm,
and go, why? And in the blindness of just going after those, I missed out on a lot.
hmm.
I I hurt some relationships. Well, you have red flags. Let me read those real fast.
Oh, yeah. I
Changes.
thought you were talking about me, and I was like, oh no.
It's right. Well, this is kind of an intervention. I've got some other your family that's going to join us now. No, some red flags. You have them listed out in your book. Change in sleep patterns,
Hmm.
a different type of tired. That one stands out to me.
Hmm.
Because I experienced it. I wasn't tired overall. I'm still fit and vibrant guy, but oh my gosh, my soul was tired.
Yeah.
You said random health problems. Good gosh. People that are doing everything, they're exercising, they're eating clean, they're sleeping, they've got their wearable device and they're following, and yet they have health problems, or again, they're tired. Intensified emotional reactions, withdrawal from pleasurable activities, general apathy, overactivated nervous system. The books that I'm getting right now, Isra, on
Hmm.
anxiety,
Mm,
I'm having to turn them down. They're great people, big publishers, big followings, but we just did a show on anxiety. It's over and over, but testifies
yeah.
to the need and the
Yeah.
demand and the issue. So those people looking at those red flags to go, this is a sign of toxic productivity. Very few people are going to hear that list and not identify with one or all, what, 8 of those, I
Yeah.
think. Um,
Yeah. And I think this is, what's happened is we've kind of just accepted these things as a part of our life.
yeah.
Oh, I'm a mom of 3 kids. Of course I'm tired, right? Yeah, I used to love that stuff, but now I just don't have time for it. Like me with the fiction reading. Yeah, I used to love it. I just don't have time for it. This is acceptable behavior. We
Yeah.
don't see these things as red flags because it's working. And why is it working? Because our productivity is feeding our emotional needs and it's helping us cope with difficult emotions. And so it's working, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Right? And to what end is it working? And I think that's where you really need to tap into questioning, pushing back, reflecting, and all of those things that we've been talking about this whole time. But it's really just about snapping out of autopilot.
Yeah.
This red flag list it's like you said, a lot of people resonate with it. Like I definitely was part of this red flag list, but I just accepted it. I didn't question an alternate way of living. Right. And so I think that's a really important thing is to reimagine an alternate way of living. And sometimes it does, unfortunately, require you to hit that rock bottom where you realize what you stand to lose
Yeah.
with these sets of behaviors. And so my hope is that this book is like the beginning point of an exploration for someone. It's not going to change your whole life, but I just want this to be a moment of pause for someone to be like, wait, maybe I don't need to bust my face open, you know?
Okay,
Like,
that's humble. It's not going to change your whole life. It might. It might. I mean, this has been a primary poison, maybe, to
mm,
my life, and
mm,
my
mm,
family can testify to it. It's been
mm,
years as I've been working out of this, and I still am, and probably always will be. Which is,
yeah,
again, why you're here. This statement is a good anchor here.
yeah,
You said this in, I don't know where it was in the book. It's page 190. The most
okay.
optimized life is not the happiest life.
Mm,
When we
mm,
get into the time management stuff and the productivity to how to be, yeah, at this point, talk about time. I'm just so tired of it. I don't want
mhm,
that. I want joy. I want
yeah,
margin. I
yeah,
want play, which used to be a
mm,
dirty word for me, play and fun. I just didn't have what's the point? Well,
yeah,
I get the point now, but I still have to. My best friend's a medical doctor and functional medicine expert, and he would resonate with us on this somewhat addicted to productivity. And he talks now about the hard work of relaxation. the
Oh,
hard work.
yeah. It is
Eh,
hard work in this culture. It is hard work to turn your brain off.
Yeah,
And I think like I was very much addicted to optimization culture.
yeah,
Like everything needs to be optimized. Like I even consider getting a mattress that tells you your body heat and blah blah blah.
yeah,
Like everything needs a number. Like I need to
yeah.
measure
And
it.
it's
I
got
need
to
to
be
see the
connected to an
progress.
app on your phone to control.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And then I was like, it just constantly keeps telling you where you're falling short because it's impossible to be optimized everywhere all the time, 24 hours a day. And so optimization is a good tool. It should not be our goal. It's a good tool to meet certain things like my step. I still count my steps because as a writer, you can go hours without getting up or
true.
walking, right? So like in those ways, like I feel like it's helpful, but yeah, I think optimization, it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't. It's paradoxical. It actually reminds you of all the things you're not being optimized on.
I am sitting here and makes me think of, I want to optimize my joy. I want to
Mm,
optimize my peace.
yeah,
I I want to optimize my my fulfillment and
yeah,
my experience, my awareness, my being present. God, really, I want to optimize my intentionality. Um,
yeah,
Isra, this has been a thank you. Um, thank you. It's been a gift to me. I'm excited to share it with myself first,
mhm,
continue chewing on
mhm,
this, and with the audience. I want to be with some of my older kids this weekend,
mhm.
and
Oh,
I want to
nice.
talk about this and talk about kind of bring back. They know this, but say, guys, this is the culture. This is how I raised you, and
Yeah,
here's here's some great tips. I love the terms, the intentionality, contrast. Thank you.
yeah.
It's a gift. Thank you for being here with me and imparting this insight to me. Thank you.
Gosh, well, thank you for having me. You asked some excellent questions and really pushed me to think about things as I was responding. So this was also a really insightful conversation for me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Friends, thanks for driving with me in this episode. Again, that was Israa Nasir, Israa, last name Nasir. The book is Toxic Productivity, Reclaim Your Time and Emotional Energy in a World That Always Demands More. And again, she's got a big community at Well Guide. You can find her on Instagram at well.guide. I hope this episode helps you drive further and most of all, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.